right. Happy Football Friday, everyone, especially fantasy football fans out there. Just wanted to do this is actually going to be our kind of first unique show here. And I dubbed this one Fantasy Football Friday because, why not? We're into the season right now. And that's where we're at. And I've got a great guest again, Shawn Pettinati. And I hope that I'm saying that correctly.
Yep. Perfect.
Pettinati. Is joining us again, and I'm going to let him kind of just speak to what he's been up to over the last few weeks here, and then we'll dive into basically what our segment is going to be. It's going to be a start, sits, and sleepers type of a segment here, and since we are doing it in the afternoon on Friday, hopefully we've got all the latest and greatest updates for you, but if not, hopefully along the way here in our next, call it 45 minutes, we'll be able to get you the most updated information on all your fantasy football needs. But take it away, Shawn.
Yeah, how you doing, Jeff? Thanks for having me on. I'm currently actually been started August 1st, about 6 weeks ago, with Total Apex Sports, and I'm writing there on the fantasy and the betting side. And I was super fortunate enough that I'm able to write the weekly DFS main slate for Total Apex, so I'm super excited about that. And week 3 just finished it up earlier today. It just went live, so you can get it on our site and the fantasy site at Total Apex Sports. And I'm gonna kind of speak from that as you and I talk about our starts and sits for the week.
Yeah, sounds good. And I've read a bunch of Shawn's stuff already. Very knowledgeable, very informative. So definitely take a peek at that. I was actually on a show with DJ Dove from the Fantasy Couriers, who's also in Fantasy Turf Wars with us. And it was funny because I'd asked him before we'd gotten on the show, I said, man, I'm looking at my flex spot because we start 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and then we've got our flex. I'm looking at my flex spot. Terry McLaurin hasn't done anything so far this year. And I asked him because I was literally going to flip a coin. I said, do I start Terry McLaurin again in my flex spot, or do I go with Braylon Allen? Mm-hmm. And he said Terry McLaurin, and I was like, all right, cool. And then sure enough, Braylon Allen puts up about 8.5, and probably going to be more than what Terry McLaurin does, but oh well, live and learn.
I know it's like poker too. Yeah, it's skill and there's luck too. I mean, it's both. It's both.
Yep. So we kind of briefly talked about this just a few minutes ago. The game last night, the New England Patriots at the New York Jets. I think what we are starting to see here in the NFL season for all of these fantasy football fans out there is that we're starting to get to what the reality of the football season should be. And I've heard this over the last few years is week 1 is a liar. Week 2 is a liar.
Biggest overreaction and maybe in all sports is week 1 in the NFL.
Yeah, and less preseason games and more regular season games. I think you're going to see that going forward, especially if they expand the season with regulars not playing. And maybe that's why we've got all the injuries that we do as well, is because they're not used to getting dinged up, banged up. They're not going full speed. They tweak something here and pull something there. And we've got a lot of injuries, which is what makes this fantasy football roundup kind of, really important. If you're not paying attention, you're looking at, CeeDee Lamb is questionable and Nico Collins is questionable and Debo is out. And it's like, who do I even start at this point?
Yeah. And to your point, I just saw before we went live, Herbert says he has a high ankle. So not plantar fasciitis, which would explain why he was in you would be in the boot for that, but a high ankle is different than plantar fasciitis, and a high ankle is not 2 weeks.
Right.
So, that's, and then I don't know about you, but I feel like the last 2 or 3 years, all I do is look at my thing and every time it beeps, you hear, oh, who's hurt? Like, it's like, that's all you look at now. Like, so-and-so's in the tent. So-and-so's getting up hobbling, and they don't hit anymore with the CBA. They don't hit anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and, going through my list of players today, looking at my tight ends, I'm thinking, geez, do I even have enough to really strongly recommend 3 and, strongly recommend sitting 3? Who are all of these guys that are
I know.
So, yeah. But mentioning the game last night, is there anybody at this point, even on the New England Patriots, that you would recommend even having on your team?
I mean,
unless you're in a dynasty league, maybe you pick up Drake May.
I guess I think you'd agree. Stevenson, just the volume. I mean, he's going to get dump offs. He gets the carries. I read a lot in the offseason that Jalen Polk was like their best receiver who could have been their one. But I mean, are you confident if you have to start any Pats receiver, especially now? Who knows? I mean, are they sticking with May? Probably not. But I mean, Are you really feel confident? And in any show, I don't know anyone that would say you're starting Demario Douglas or Jalen Polk or Baker. You're just not. Now, Hunter Henry in tight end being a minefield, he might be a fringe weekly starter,
Sure.
targets, but probably not.
Yeah. And, if I tell you, hey, Demario Douglas is your number one guy in New England, you're probably going to go, well, okay, he's a number 3 on most other teams.
Yeah. He's probably a wide receiver 5 on your team.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, the Jets are looking like the Jets. I think this is what we kind of anticipated the Jets looking like, and it took them a couple of weeks to get there. Didn't look very good against San Fran, but they weren't out on the field a whole lot. San Fran had time of possession 2-1, and then last week they looked good. And this is kind of what we expected, I think, in week 3.
Yeah.
Like I said before, it was week 1 is a liar, week 2 is a liar. And I think when you take a look at New England beating Cincinnati in week 1, that's not true. That's not reality. That was mistakes and all this other stuff. Now we're getting down to the reality. So this should make the fantasy football forecast a little bit easier to stomach. And I tell you what, let's start off with quarterbacks because that's just what everybody does. Do you want to take the lead on this one?
For my slate at Total Apex Sports, I feel like you got to bank 20 on your quarterback, and I'm speaking from the DFS perspective. So this week I picked in mine. I wrote I took Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
He did real well, obviously, last week. He seems to be coming along, getting a little healthier. He's got the rushing. So if he can, I think he's got a good path to 20. He's got a good tight end. And what happened when he targeted Marvin Harrison after week 1, I don't know what happened, but you saw he went off, because he targeted Harrison. And I'll pull it up here on my thing here.
I think last week he
had
leading quarterback.
He had 20. I think he had 28 fantasy points last week.
Yep. He was number 1.
Yeah, 28.54 fantasy points last week, and now he's up in 21.3 for the season. So that's who I picked him in my article is and he's a top 4 quarterback on FanDuel pricing wise, so it's right in line. That's kind of who I recommended. I thought about Goff. He's a dome guy. He isn't great on the road, but Arizona is not. It's kind of a controlled environment, but that's got shootout potential, and I think that's got a slate total of 51. Thereabouts 51 and a half. So you got a potential for a shootout. That was another guy I toyed between those two guys. Again, I'm from a DFS perspective, so I can't offer everybody that's $10,000, so it has to be a balance.
Right.
So, he comes in at 8,300 on FanDuel. So, he's for him to pay 2x his salary, he needs about 22-ish points, and that's within his range.
Yeah. No, I definitely think it is. And if you look at, the top 4 guys last week, you had Murray at number 1, Hurts at number 2, Carr, who was at about 22 points, and then Darnold, who was at 20. So there's only a few people that are going to hit that 20-plus marker every week. And I think when you take a look at that, my must-start quarterbacks for this week, and in no particular order, but I had Kyler Murray also in that top 3 versus Detroit. It just makes sense. He was the leader last week. He goes up against a Detroit defense that is decent, but that really should be a shootout, like you said. Even the over-under is higher than most other games. Number 2, I had Patrick Mahomes versus Atlanta, and now he's been kind of sketch over the first couple of weeks. But the 2 keys there are that the running backs in Kansas City, obviously you got Pacheco is out.
You took the words right out of my mouth with the running back. I think it's going to go pass heavy, so I love that pick.
Yep. So the backfield is in question there. I think Mahomes takes over. And then I've got, for my third guy, not trying to be biased, but I've got Lamar Jackson in there as number 3 because Dallas, the run defense there, it isn't good. But when you're looking at the offense that Baltimore has put out, they are leading the NFL with 417 yards per game. And they're also 4th in passing, which I don't think a lot of people appreciate. You've got Lamar who can pass. You've got Lamar who can run. And against this questionable defense in Dallas, and what, again, maybe could be a high-scoring game because Baltimore's pass defense isn't that great, if CeeDee Lamb plays in there right now, last I checked, he was questionable. I think Lamar Jackson has the ability to really get up into that 20 plus points for this game. And really just rushing the ball. If they plan it right between him and King Henry, I think they can really run right through the Dallas defense. At that point.
I mean, you can't. Yes, and you know what a Jackson is. What he gives you, and like when I talk about this when I do like a single game DFS or the main one for a lock. The lock, you have to have someone with a high floor, and Lamar has a high floor. So because of the rushing, so like that's if you're going to build, you can't miss on quarterback. You can't play DFS and have your quarterback give you 8 points or 10 points. And I think when you have Lamar, obviously you're barring injury, but he gives you that safe floor. You got to have a floor. I like to use Josh Allen a lot, and you're going to pay. I'll pay up for quarterback, and so you're paying up for Lamar. And I mean, and then you can save somewhere else.
Yeah. Who do you got for people that you absolutely, quarterback wise, would you not start? They're absolute sits.
Well, I'm worried about, I guess if I had to pick one, I'm worried about Stafford. Obviously, it's probably an obvious one because he doesn't have a wide receiver one. I mean, he lost both of their wide receiver ones. Their tight end is not in fantasy. Their tight end where you drafted him, he'd be a tight end 2.
Yeah.
So it could be, I don't know, could be DeMarcus Robb. And then another person I'm worried about is at what point do we call? I don't think we're there yet, and he's not on the main slate, but Trevor Lawrence. He faces a tough Bills secondary, and I think he's QB. Right now, through 2 weeks, I think he's QB 16, but that's not where you drafted him, or if you're starting him in a 12-team league, that's not cutting it for you. I mean, he certainly hasn't matched up to where he was drafted, so I'm worried about him. The Bills secondary is very good.
Yeah, and you know what?
Those are my 2.
Yep, you took 2 right from me there. Stafford being one because who the heck is he going to throw to? And that San Francisco defense is no joke either. And then obviously Trevor Lawrence. 25th in the league in passing, and Buffalo's pass defense has shown that it's much better than it was in the first half of that first game in week 1. So those 2 in particular, and then I'll throw out Herbert too. I don't know if anybody is starting.
Yeah, well, now with this high ankle too.
Yep. So he's going up against Pittsburgh. I didn't expect a whole lot of points there. That, and they're a little bit more run heavy with J.K. Dobbins getting 130 yards per game. So not a good idea. And if anybody was even thinking about it, because Daniel Jones actually had a decent week last week. He finished with 18.5 points.
Yep.
Don't start Daniel Jones against Cleveland. Jones had a good week. Yep, that's great. But keep in mind that it was against Washington, and Washington has possibly the worst defense.
Worst secondary.
Yeah. So
especially the secondary.
Yeah, those were that was my honorable mention. If you're thinking about him, don't do it. Who do you got for potential sleepers this week? And you already mentioned one of mine. I tell you
sleepers.
What, if you don't mind, I'll go first. I've got.
Yeah, you go ahead. You go first on this one. I just wanted to back up your point on Lamar. I was checking here on the rate. That game is at 48. It's one of the top in the slate. The total in that Cowboys game, you talked about a shootout. So that's there with that slate, 47, 48, 47.5 implied total. That's a good call there.
Yeah. You mentioned Jared Goff before, and I think I'm using him as a sleeper in this game. If you're not a team that has one of the top quarterbacks in the league, like we mentioned before, Arizona, Detroit, that's going to be a high scoring game. I think he's really got a chance to do a lot more. Goff does, and I'll even call it out right now. I think this is Laporta's breakout week. He hasn't had much of anything in the first 2 weeks, but I think Laporta is going to be huge in this one, even just as a dump off guy. So that's going to be one of my sleepers anyway.
Yeah. So mine is going to be, and people may not know this. I look, it's on my article. The QB1 through 2 weeks is Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. Yeah, he is.
So that's good. I would say him. I have him as a recommended stack and I think Godwin, I have him as a recommended stack in my article, the Baker and Godwin stack. I think Godwin somewhat, you might start taking over as the wide receiver 1 over Evans, but I don't know if he's a sleeper, but he isn't on the stat wise. He's not, but he's probably price wise. He would be a sleeper.
Oh yeah. Good deal. So there's your quarterback information. Let's run over to the running backs. How are you feeling about them this week?
All right, for my running back starts this week, I just have to go with the obvious one. I mean, Mason. Again, I think you just keep starting him. He's that position. You put anybody in that spot. It doesn't matter who they put in that system. That they produce RB1 numbers.
Oh yeah.
And then Kyron's probably going to end up. He could get a bump in the passing game. So Kyron Williams is another good one, I think, this year or this week. I'm sorry. I think that's a volume play. And then I'm trying to think who else. I mean, those are probably my top. Those two are right there is Mason. And then Dobbins is going to get fed again. I'm going to keep riding that train. The only thing that concerns me about Dobbins is he's doing it on not a lot of carries. So he's due for some positive regression because Edwards is still lurking there. I think they want to protect him from getting beat up. But, how do you tell someone not to start Dobbins based on what it is? He's had explosive runs, which is what you want to see.
Yep. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I had my number one guy was Jordan Mason. With Debo being out, the Rams don't have much of an offense already. Basically, what I'm looking at is kind of what you just recapped, is that Kyron Williams is going to get a lot of touches. He's going to get a lot of opportunity to put points out there. But I think San Fran just ends up running away with this, almost literally, with Jordan Mason in the backfield there. My other guys that I had Derrick Henry. Again, I'm going to the Ravens, have one of the best offenses in the NFL. They're going up against a defense that can't seem to stop the run. Derrick Henry has gotten more carries. He's gotten more looks from week 1 to week 2. So I'm hoping that they've figured something out with him. But then I've also got my number 3 guy was Devon Achane. And I had to go with him even against Seattle's defense. And I love Mike McDonald. I love what he's doing out there. But the way that they gave him 30 carries.
Yeah. And to back your point up there, sorry to interrupt you, buddy.
No, go ahead.
I just read that it doesn't look like Mostert's going to play. Mostert. So that backs up even more. I actually forgot about him. That's another great call. And I also read that the coaches can't shy away from giving him the volume. He can't. I mean,
no,
because look what he just did.
Kind of an unproven quarterback back. Whether you're going to start, which is probably going to be Skylar Thompson, sorry. And then sooner or later, they're going to probably end up starting Tyler Huntley because I think he's probably more along the lines of the quarterback similarities to Tua. But yeah, I had Achane in there just because they're not afraid to give him the ball. It doesn't matter if they're ahead or if they're behind. Obviously, they're keeping him in there. The game is over. They're keeping him in the game until late fourth quarter. So he was another one. And then my obvious pick was Alvin Kamara as well. I mean, I don't know. Just the same thing as J.K. Dobbins. I don't know how you can shy away with him when and all running backs. And
your HM pick even more so. He's game script proof because of his receiving ability. So if they're ahead, he's going to get it. If they're behind, you got to use him in a passing game. He could be a good dump off option for that kind of unproven quarterback.
Absolutely. Must sits. I'll take this one first. My first must sit. Ezekiel Elliott or Rico Dowdell, whoever they're going to start. It looks like Zeke was the main guy in week 1. They gave a few more carries over to Rico. Doesn't matter. They're going against a very stout Ravens run defense. I don't think either one of them have a chance in that game. I would put both of them on the bench if you've got one or the other.
I got the Chiefs backfield. It's probably an obvious one, but you can't. If you're, in our fantasy turf war, being a deep league, I may have to use P. Ryan if Tajay Spears doesn't play, but because of the pass, he should be the third down back. But I mean, you don't know who they're going to use, and I'll talk about this later when we do our sleepers. I have someone who I think will be the beneficiary of that, and it won't be a running back, but. I mean, I don't know. Mine is the Chiefs backfield until it shakes out. And Kareem Hunt's probably was the pickup of the week last week because he's probably in 3 weeks. We're probably talking about he's the lead back.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of backfields back there that are all beaten up. Houston's backfield. I don't know what the status is on Joe Smith. If
Mixon didn't practice again today, so it's looking like a Cam Akers week. Actually, there's another good one you might be able to use right there.
Yeah, and I wouldn't touch him. Minnesota has the 8th best rushing defense. Cam
Hmm.
Akers, I wouldn't do anything there. I think they're probably going to use more of their wide receivers, even if Nico doesn't play, and their
Hmm.
tight end. Hint, hint, wink, wink. That's one of my guys for later on. I also wouldn't go with Najee Harris versus the Chargers, who gave up literally 6.5 points per game so far, and Harris hasn't been impressive. So that
No,
backfield, I don't care who you're saying
it
is going to be
pains me to it pains me to agree, but like Warren was used more last week, so obviously in week 1 he wasn't fully healthy. It was more of a split last week than it
Mhm.
was in week 1, so the hamstring obviously wasn't 100%.
Yeah.
But that offense, I guess you probably the only person you're recommending there is Pickens. He's a guy.
Mm.
He's one shot away, maybe can taking something to the house, but
Yeah,
I
he's
don't
a
know what
home run
else you would.
guy, I think maybe
Yeah,
at this point.
exactly.
Any sleepers for running backs that might tear one off surprisingly?
Tough one. I don't really have a sleeper on that one, but um, Tony Pollard has been really impressive. I wouldn't know if I would call him a sleeper, but I mean, you have to keep him. He's got the volume this year,
Yeah.
and he's starting to do something with it. So I guess I would Pollard. I don't think because last year he didn't do very well at all in Dallas, especially in short yardage, but he's certainly off to a good start. He's the best friend for Levis because that coach was pretty upset with him last week.
Oh
Some of
yeah.
those plays he had. So Pollard would be. I guess I wouldn't have called it maybe a sleeper, but maybe someone who might be off the radar.
Yeah, I think he's a smart start as well. He'll get you 16 to 20 carries in a game and a handful of
Hmm.
passes, and they're going up against a Green Bay defense that really isn't impressive. And I think in week 2, when we saw Malik Willis, I don't think that's the real Malik Willis. I think it's a fake Malik Willis. I don't think he's that good. I don't think
No,
I don't
I
think
agree.
Green Bay is going to end up putting up the same kind of efficient offense against them this week, and that's going to allow them to give the ball to Tony Pollard. So it's kind of a sneaky pick, especially after what you said about
Yeah.
Will Levis. I don't think the coach likes him at all.
Yeah, and
Um,
Pollard is actually RB12 right now, so he's an RB1, and he
oh,
drafted him,
there
I
you go.
think, in the 8th or 9th round. So
Yeah.
you getting massive draft value right now on him.
And then for sleepers, I've got 3 sleepers. I think any one of these guys could end up tearing one off. Jerome Ford against the Giants. I think if they get
Hmm.
up enough, I think Jerome Ford could have a good day. Zamir White against Denver. He hasn't been that impressive, but I think maybe against Denver. And then DeAndre Swift. I'm waiting for him to have a breakout game.
Hmm.
And you almost get the feeling that maybe against somebody like the Colts, it might happen.
And
If you're
last
looking
week,
for a
Herbert didn't
RB2.
really because Justin Herbert wasn't really he didn't really he was a little bit involved, I think, in week 1. Last week he wasn't. So I mean, yeah, he's another one he could be game script proof if they gave him because he's a good receiver too. So and Williams didn't have a great game. Start using the back more a little bit.
Yep,
Find
exactly.
ways to get him, to screens to get him some confident throws.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, and I think you have to do something in Chicago. It's not a time to hit the panic button,
no,
obviously, because they're 1-1 still. But the way that Caleb Williams has been playing, it should cause some concern. And I think you have to take some of that pressure off of his shoulders right now before it crumbles the kid.
yeah, and you can
So
you're
I
right.
think
Like we said, you can use the back, and Keenan Allen is out again this week. I'm pretty certain of that. I just saw that, so you can use Swift in the passing game, but that help. I mean, those catches add up, those points add up, even in a half PPR.
Yeah. Any other running backs you want to discuss?
No, that's all I had for this week with that.
Right.
Pollard is just me because like I said, he's draft value. If he stays at RB12, you way outproduced his draft spot.
Yeah.
So that was mine for the week.
That's a good one. Let's move over to wide receivers. You want to take this one? You already kind of mentioned Godwin.
Yeah, Godwin is in there. In my article this week, I actually have 2 here. In my starts, I had Chris Olave. Obviously, the Saints are a big surprise, but Olave was finally targeted last week. He had a 37.5% target share, and his metrics pair up with the Eagles secondary. And he's priced great. Like I'll speak in a DFS perspective. He's only 7,100 on FanDuel. So that's a very reasonably priced. And then my stud of the week, my Apex stud of the week was Amon St. Brown. So
boom.
that's Again, we said it earlier. He's got the slate high 51.5 total. It's a potential shootout. Yes, Goff isn't great on the road, but he's in a controlled environment. It's sort of a de facto dome. And last week, Amron he got targeted, I believe, 11 catches on 18 targets. So I put him as my stud of the week. And again, I'm recommending a stud because I want someone with a high floor. And, and I think if he gets targeted like that, the touchdowns are coming.
Yeah.
The multi-touchdown week might be coming.
The funny thing is, Shawn, you took my top three. I literally had Godwin number 1, Amon-Ra number 2, and then Olave number 3. So we're on the same page there.
Yeah, and Godwin's stack with Mayfield starting to is the one I recommended in my article too. That's a stack I had in there.
Nice. I went ahead and I did 6 must starts just because there's that many wide receivers that you got to play, and these other ones should not be a no-brainer. I've got Stephon Diggs as a must start this week, especially with I just love the idea. Okay, Nico Collins is out. I don't love that idea, but they're going to Minnesota, which is where Stephon started. So you've got Diggs going back home. It's not like he hasn't been throwing the ball. He's been getting about the equal share of throws between him and Nico Collins. But the Minnesota passing defense isn't great. They'll probably give some more up. So I like Stephon Diggs in that one, especially if Nico can't go. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr., we've talked in length about the Cardinals and the Lions game. But then I've got Devonta Smith again in Philadelphia against New Orleans. If New Orleans comes out fast and they put up another, even 30, 35 points, Philly's going to have to throw the ball, and he's their number 1 guy right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely. Yeah, because Brown's down again.
Yep. So giving it up to Devonta. Must sits for me. I've got my number 1 must sit is Jaden Reed. And, maybe
that's funny you say that. Go ahead.
maybe any wide receivers from Green Bay, kind of what I mentioned before, because I don't believe in Malik Willis. And they're going up against Tennessee that has a pretty decent pass defense.
Mm-hmm.
So Jaden Reed is my number 1. If you've got him on your team, a lot of hope is there for him. I wouldn't do it this week.
It's funny you say that. As I was writing my article midweek, I had Jaden Reed as my dud.
Oh, good.
And I saw that, and the only reason I pulled back is because I saw that Jordan Love was practicing. And limited he started practicing. So they say they're taking it right up to game time. I don't know how you play that fast off an MCL, but they're saying he's going to take it up to game time and try. So I erased it and I put I didn't, and I put Mike Evans in there because he's a perimeter receiver. With Godwin moving more to the slot this year, he'll avoid probably Pat Surtain. Mm-hmm. And Mike Evans will probably see Pat Surtain, and they just, Pat Surtain back-to-back weeks. He shut down, obviously, my guy Pickens last week.
Yeah.
And then, their top rank. And then in week 1, he locked up DK Metcalf. So that's why I have Evans as a sit as well.
Yeah.
And I'm with you on Reed. If he doesn't play, all of them.
Yeah, no wide receivers. And then you're looking at Josh Jacobs, too, is questionable to play with a back issue that he's continuously had. So now you take him out of the equation as well. It's like, well, now who are you going to focus on? Now you're just going to blitz all day.
Yep. So, and if Willis plays, they think they gave Jacobs over 30 carries last week, I believe. So you see what they're going to do is it's going to be a small volume passing game.
Yep. I've got as a must sit, and this kills me too because I actually drafted him in our Fantasy Turf Wars League, Terry McLaurin. Jaden McDaniels has proven that he's not the passer that we thought that he was coming out of college, and Cincinnati is just going to blanket him. You might think that Terry McLaurin, it's like, oh, he's the only wide receiver that they got on that team, so they should be giving them the ball all the time. It's not happening. What did he catch? He had 6 passes, I think, last week for like 22 yards. I don't even know how that averages out. You're throwing him the ball like on 2-yard, passes all the time. It's just, it's not a play that you should really be willing to take at this point in time with Washington.
Yeah. He was efficient last week, but he didn't have a great yards per carry or yards per attempt. It was like just because I have him in a couple fantasy leagues. He was fair. Again, his rushing kept it from being a horrible day. He still gave you enough points that it wouldn't kill you, but because of his legs. But if you took away the rushing, his passing numbers are pedestrian.
Yeah.
Last week anyway.
couple other guys I had in there. I had Rashad Bateman. If you haven't given up on him yet, you might as well. 4 targets last week for 40 yards. He's got 9 total targets for 93 yards in 2 games. A lot of hope for him in the offseason, but he's not panning out. And then I'll throw this one in there too. Here's a be very weary of this individual, and it's Alec Pierce. So you've got the return of Josh Downs, and you're going up against the Chicago defense. So that one I would be a little weary on. I'm not saying bench him. I'm just saying think about it, and maybe if you've got a better option, go that route, because Alec Pierce has been dynamite through the first 2 weeks, but I think that's going to change.
And I'll back that up with you. Anthony Richardson is a 49% completion percentage passer.
Yep.
With 3 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So he is not similar. He just doesn't have the passing acumen. And he had a couple home runs in week 1, but the volume wasn't there for the receivers. And obviously Pittman's another one. I've thought about putting Pittman in as a not start and all that, because he's, where you drafted him, he's certainly not done very well.
Right. You got any wide receiver sleepers?
My sleeper for this week, and it has to go. I'm going to go back to the Chiefs. I think Worthy is going to be the beneficiary in the short passing game with the bubble screens, the jet sweeps and all that. I think they may use him. I might see him. I'm thinking maybe they'll line him up in the backfield. I think he's going to end up getting some of those running back touches, and I think he's going to end up having a decent game. I could see him benefiting from this smorgasbord of running backs because they don't have a bell cow right now.
Let's go to some of these questions too. I just started to see that we got a couple of questions in here, and I want to go ahead and answer some of these for some individuals.
Sure.
Brad McCoy asked, would you trade DJ Moore for Olave and Ridley?
Yeah, I'd go right. I don't know about you, but if I'm going to get Ridley, because Ridley's the alpha in that, that receiving. And was Olave and Ridley?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I would go hit accept real fast on that one.
Yep, I would too. Yep. That's what I'm kind of letting him know. Absolutely make that trade.
Yeah, he's winning that trade. Now Moore is good, but you're getting back at least 2 players at least on the same level, so you're winning that one.
What else we got in here? Ayuk or Charbonnet this week?
Ooh, well, I didn't I just read too that Kittle is banged up as well now?
He is
a little bit. Probably.
So you're going to have basically your main targets are going to be Ayuk and then Juwan Jennings.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Ayuk's the wide receiver 1 for that team this week. Charbonnet is most likely going to start, but if I had to, I would lean Ayuk. I'm assuming this is a PPR.
I would certainly hope so.
If it's standard, I would do Charbonnet because I like to lean the running back in the standard, because Charbonnet is going to, if he's the back, he's going to get some goal line carries.
All right. Here's another one. Should I trade Tyreek for Jamar Chase standard redraft league?
Based on the quarterback situation, I would say yes.
Yeah, I was nodding my head. Yep, too.
When we go to some sits or whatever, wide receivers, I was going to suggest you're not sitting Tyreek, obviously, but he's a concern. And Waddle, those are, I wouldn't call them sits, but in the dud category for the wide receivers, because you don't know what you're going to get.
All right. I want to hear your opinions on this wild trade. Lamar. Wow, this is a big one. Lamar, Bijan, Debo, Tank Dell, and Kelsey. You're getting 5 guys there.
All right, he's sending those, right?
Yeah. For Josh Allen, J.K. Dobbins, Tyreek Hill, Ridley, and Ingram. My first thought is no. Don't do that.
I say no. Ingram's got a soft tissue, the hamstring, correct? Hill is a question mark. No, I'm not doing that.
No, I wouldn't. I'd keep Lamar.
No way.
Debo, he's going to be back. Tank Dell's good. Kelsey is going to bounce back. Josh Allen.
As much as I love Allen,
boy,
you're giving up too much to get Allen.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's a no for me. I think we're definitely in agreement on that one.
Okay, and then Bronson says, I got offered Devontae and Rashad White for Carr, Mason, and Terry or Waddell, or Amon-Ra and Rashad White for Carr, Mason, Waddell, and Terry. Which should I take? All right, well, let's reevaluate that.
All right, there's a lot going on there. So
yeah, right. I got offered Devontae and Rashad White.
Okay.
For Carr, Mason, and Terry. I'm assuming Terry McLaurin. Waddell. That's one trade.
We want to take that one first. So I'm always wary of a 4-for-2 trade and all that stuff, or 2-for-1 trades, because I feel like they know they're sending me inferior. So I'm worried. I mean, so he's losing Devontae Adams, correct? Who's a solid target hound.
Exactly.
I'd probably go no on that one, because the Miami receivers is too up in the air. If Tua was playing, it's a different story. But if Tua was playing, you're probably not getting that trade offer. Mason
is temporary.
Yeah.
So, CMC is going to be back, and then Mason is nothing for you. Terry McLaurin hasn't proven anything, and Waddell has
he's got who's his quarterback? Yeah.
Or here's the next one: Amon-Ra and Rashawn White for Carr, Mason, Waddell, and Terry.
I'm not giving up Amon-Ra. I'm not giving up Amon-Ra.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't give that one up either. I wouldn't,
because that's another one. That's one of those trades. They're giving you. They want to give you 3 or 4 to try to get you to bite. But the best player in the deal is Amon-Ra.
Yep,
that's exactly. What I look at it. So that's a no for me.
Yeah, that's a no for me too. Because again, you got Mason in there, Waddle we already covered, and Terry already. You're not getting anything. So
McLaurin and Waddle are right now. The issues are quarterback.
He'd be getting Devontae Adams and Rashad White.
He's getting Devontae and Rashad White.
Getting Amon-Ra St. Brown and Rashad White.
Then if you're getting Amon-Ra, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not giving him up.
No, I think if that was the deal, you could either trade all of those players away for Devontae Adams and Rashad White, or Amon-Ra St. Brown and Rashad White. I'd go Amon.
Yeah, take the best player. If I'm going to get a St. Brown, I'm taking him.
And if somebody's offering you that deal, man, I would take that and run.
Yeah, go run and hit the accept button and get Amon-Ra.
Yep, absolutely. Good stuff, Bronson. Hey, thanks for chiming in, man. Appreciate it. I think we were done with these, or did we get into the sleepers for wide
receiver? We did sleeper. We did sits. So I think we're on to, we did sleepers. Did we do sits? We did sits for receivers. Yeah, so I think we're on to tight end, aren't we?
Well, just for sleepers, what I would say is I like Jalen Naylor versus Houston, especially if JJ can't go. And I also like another Jalen Tolbert against Baltimore, because
very good call there.
And CD is limping around, I guess. And then my third sleeper is Drake London. He went from 3 targets to 7 targets week 1, week 2. And I liked that game, the Atlanta-Philadelphia game. I think that was a gigantic boost for Atlanta. So I'm interested to see how they actually handle Kansas City. And Drake London, I think, could be a big factor in that one.
If you check out also on the Total Apex Sports, I'll give a little plug here in my parlay this week. I took the Falcons. So I like the Falcons at home here. And one of my weekly 3-team parlay I do for Total Apex Sports. Yeah. They're one of mine.
I don't think that's a bad pick.
And that game, I'll talk about it when we get to the tight ends. I did a little write-up on that game too, but I'll talk about it.
So we got Brad McCoy is back, and I want to give him some time here.
Sure.
Who would you start in flex out of Zamir White versus Carolina? Brian Thompson Jr. versus Buffalo, and Amari Cooper. Oh, we've got Amari Cooper versus the Giants, and then Ladd McConkey versus Pittsburgh.
What was the first? All right, so
first one was Zamir White versus Carolina, which might not be bad. Zamir White hasn't shown a whole lot, but you don't know
that's my pick. Carolina. Well, Thomas has the Bills secondary, which is a tough. Yep. We talked about that earlier.
Amari Cooper might not be getting a lot of throws.
Cooper is actually one of my sits. He's a sit for me in my DFS.
Yep.
So I wouldn't, until we see the Browns offense do something, I can't recommend you starting anybody. And Cooper's like, I'm getting ahead here a little bit, but I think he's wide receiver. Let me just pull this up. He's wide receiver 82 after 2 weeks.
Oof.
He's got 5 catches for 27 yards through 2 weeks. So, if you want to start him, and not saying he could go out and have a good week, but there's no data to show that. Now they are getting their tackles back. That's going to help.
I think the general consensus would be Zamir White versus Carolina.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, he should be a positive game script for White. And that if the Raiders get the lead, you should see this is a Zamir White week for sure. Because in theory, they should be ahead.
Unless Andy Dalton just tears one open.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They'll be better with him there. I mean, they can't be worse, right, Jeff?
Oh, God. How could it be worse?
There's no way. I mean,
they're not starting Cam Newton there anymore.
No. And
anyway,
there was rumors they were bringing him in. Did you see that?
They did. It's so silly. It's as dumb as saying Colin Kaepernick is coming back. He hasn't played for 8 years. Can we bury that with a shovel and bury the shovel?
It's time to move on.
It's dead. All right, let's move on to tight ends. Speaking of which, and this was probably the hardest one to put together out of all of the player categories, just because there's so few that are actually doing anything.
Yeah.
And
like we said, it's a minefield.
Yeah. So, I mean, my must starts for the week, I've got Brock Bowers at number 1. He's been the only consistent guy over 2 weeks. And he's going against Carolina. So we just kind of talked about them. He hasn't gotten a touchdown yet, but he's like the 3rd highest scoring tight end. I think he breaks that this week. I think he gets his first score this week as well. So, but he's been the most consistent. So Brock Bowers is my number 1. And my number 2 is Kyle Pitts. Because I think after watching Cincinnati versus KC, Gesicki was getting everything. I mean, I'm not saying that they were leaving him wide open, but I mean, he was getting very catchable balls. And Kyle Pitts is no slouch either. So those would be my 2 must starts out of tight ends for the week.
Well, you must read my articles, Jeff, because you already picked my guys. I don't have to say
I want
anything.
some diversity in there, but like I said, there's not a whole lot. I mean, you can only pick so many guys. There's like maybe 5 guys.
In my DFS slate, the article I wrote, I got Bowers. I mean, again, speaking from he's tight end 2 right now. Last week, 9 for 98, and on the season, he's got an 88.2% catch rate. I mean, he's behind Adams in targets, but just like you said, the touchdowns are going to come. Normally, I don't recommend a tight end. When I do the article in the start spot, I didn't throw a running back. I put a tight end in there this week. So that's why I kind of paused when you were asking about the tight ends, because I actually used that. And then I did a separate write-up, a DFS write-up on a single game, just a single game on the Falcons and the Chiefs. And I put Pitts as a start because I think they're going to follow the Bengals. Last week, they hit the tight end up like crazy. So, and Chase, they kind of shut Chase down. They targeted the tight ends, I think, Burrow 18 times last week, his 3 tight ends. So I'm thinking that, Kirk will do the same thing. And at some point, I mean, I just don't know how you have a tight end like that. He has the draft capital and he doesn't get fed targets till he can't walk anymore.
For sure.
I mean, if he's not the number 1 option on that team, then how is he not the 2 in the passing game?
Yeah.
I mean, and he's got a quarterback this year, so I'm with you on both of those guys.
All right, we got George Play is asking, should I drop Blake Corum for Jalen Wright?
Here's what I'll say on that. If you have any Dolphin running backs already, like a couple times I've got Mostert. I don't have any. I wish I had a chain shares, HN. I have hardly any shares at all. If I have Mostert, which I do, I have Wright on my bench because if something goes down, just to protect that asset. If not, my concern now with Corum is what's the future of the Rams offense? I mean, okay, right now, Kyron's healthy. He's the RB1. Corum, 3 weeks ago, he looked great when Puka and Kupp were healthy. He was a lottery ticket on your bench if something happened to Wright or to Williams. But now, he's not the lottery ticket he was.
Yeah, and George said I don't have any Rams or running Dolphins running backs.
Okay.
I guess I wouldn't. No, I guess I wouldn't. I
Then
would keep Blake Corum at that
I
point
keep
because
Corum
most
because he's got a direct path because there's not two backs in front of him. There's only one.
right.
So I
Yep,
keep Corum.
I would go with Corum as well. I think
Mhm.
we're in agreement there. And then Jay Phil says, would you trade Pollard for Monty PPR? I'm guessing Montgomery with the Lions. Would you trade Pollard for Montgomery?
Not what I'm seeing right now. He's an RB1. I would just say no if it's I know we're shallow. We're 2 weeks in, but he's RB12. He's an
Yeah,
RB1. I'm not as if to say here I'm no on that.
I can see where that interest might be. Pollard's not
Mhm.
really sharing time as much as Monty is with Jameer Gibbs, but
Mhm.
Monty is still he's still getting the ball first,
Yeah.
and the Lions' offense is way better than the Tennessee offense,
Mhm.
so you've got more opportunity for scoring there. So right now, I guess I wouldn't. Not until if you
Oh,
start.
he would have been getting Pollard. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. So he's
Yeah,
keeping
would you
Montgomery,
trade
correct?
Pollard for Monty? No, I would not trade. I guess my answer would be no, I would not, or yes, I would trade Pollard for
Or so
Monty. I would
you
trade
would
Pollard.
you want Pollard. Or he's
Maybe I'm reading
losing.
that wrong.
Yeah.
Would you trade Pollard for Monty? I would trade
Okay.
Pollard
So you're
for
getting
Monty.
money back. So,
Yeah.
okay. So Mike, I think we finally have a disagreement, but I guess I would keep the only reason is I think that I think Pollard right now is this true bell cow. I don't think he has any competition. Gibbs is still there, but I can't. I see your point though. He's the goal line back. He's going to get the goal line carries. So Montgomery. So I see both sides.
Yeah, I feel like, and just watching that overtime game against the Rams as well, when they went into overtime, they did not hesitate. They gave that ball
Hmm.
to Montgomery. He ran it right down their throats and right into the end zone. And I'm just looking at that kind of a skill set and going, well, I guess if they really needed points at the end of the game,
Hmm.
they're not going to go to Gibbs. He's not going to be their go-to guy. He's flashy and he's fun and all that kind of stuff. But I think Montgomery, I mean, like I said, the system that they've got in Detroit right now, where it seems like they're splitting time between the two running backs very, very well. They give
Hmm.
it to Montgomery for a quarter and a half, and then they give it to Gibbs, and then at the end of the game, it's back to Monty, and it's like, okay, I guess he's going to be the starter and the finisher, and he's the bread that holds the sandwich together, so to speak.
Yeah, and I can't argue with you saying who's got the better offense. That's a no-brainer. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, but you've got Montgomery on the year too as leading. He's got more points than Pollard, albeit
yeah,
not very much, maybe one or two,
yeah.
but
Let me just pull this up here, Jeff. I didn't even just for the heck of it.
it's a horse apiece at this point.
Yeah,
But I would stick. I would, if you're offering me
yeah.
one, I'd go Montgomery.
Mine. Well, here we're in this validates you and I were kind of torn. Pollard's RB12 and Montgomery's RB13. So that would explain why you and I are torn.
Yeah,
I just wanted
that's
to pull it
close.
up. So it's a tough one.
Yeah,
But I mean, I don't think you lose that trade either way. I don't think you lose it. So we hope we can help them out with that. I
Yeah.
guess it also depends. What are your other running backs? Are you 2-0? Are you 0-2? Do you need to win this week? You know
Yep.
what I mean? That's another factor.
There's always that too. It's who's your wide receivers, who's your quarterback.
Yeah.
Are you tying people together?
Yeah.
I always look at bye weeks too.
Yeah.
I've drafted. I mean, I think you have to look at bye weeks. It's like, oh no, half my team has a bye in week 5. Well, then you drafted stupid. Maybe you should have been looking at that instead of saying, hey, you know what? If it was a decision between, oh shoot, I've got the possibility to either pick Montgomery or Pollard, thinking that there were going to be equal quarterbacks. Well, maybe the tiebreaker is your bye week. And you go with,
Yep.
You look at your team and you say, well, I've got somebody who's got a bye in week 5 and I've got somebody who's a bye in week 12. Well, this individual has bye week 7. So cool. I'm going to go with that one versus the other one who also has bye week 5. So, but yeah, there's a lot more to it. But if we're just kind of, like you said, that could be 12A and 12B between the two of those.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they are too. Yeah.
All right. So tight ends. We were still talking about tight ends.
Yeah. Tight end. I think we did starts. I mean, sits, we could probably pick anybody for a tight end sit, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple of them listed. I've got Dalton.
You go ahead.
Dalton Kincaid might be kind of a weird one, but he's with Buffalo. I expect Buffalo to get a lead. He's had 5 receptions in 44 yards this year. So he's not being targeted a whole lot. He's not getting a whole lot of receptions in a game that they should easily win against Jacksonville. I've got Dalton Kincaid. You should maybe find somebody else, but again, it's understandable if there's nobody else there because it's really tough to find someone.
Yeah. My only one would be he's he was considered, this hurts me to say this too, Jeff, and you'll know why in a second, but Freiermuth to sit. I mean, a lot of people thought he was a great wait and see tight end, but I can't invest in anybody in that passing game. And last week, of course, the tight end that did score a touchdown was Darnell Washington. So that was his touchdown. Feels it wasn't even to Freiermuth. So my pick for him is you could sit anybody, but I'm going to say Freiermuth. I'm not starting him.
You could, and I kind of had, just looking at my sit club here, I've got the 5 reception club. I've got Dalton Kincaid with 5 receptions, 44 yards, Cole Kmet, 5 receptions, 31 yards, Greg Dulcich, 5 receptions, 28 yards. Man, stay away from all of them, and they were supposed to be decent. My sleepers that I've actually got some intriguing sleepers that I want to get your take on. Number 1 is Dalton Schultz. Now, he hasn't done anything either. But again, we talked about Nico Collins maybe not being there. Minnesota doesn't have great coverage when it comes to tight ends so far in the first 2 games. So I think Dalton Schultz might get a few more looks and a few more points this week.
I got a couple, and this is, again, I know we're shallow, and it's a minefield of position, but Mike Gesicki is tight end 6. He's got 13 targets. A lot of those were last week, obviously. And then one of them already played last night. But for future, Conklin, Rodgers looks for his tight ends. And then Foster Moreau, or tight end 11, and an offense that's humming right now. If you need it, someone to start. He also could be a sneaky DFS. If you want to punt at tight end, you could start a Saint tight end and Foster Moreau and go crazy at wide receiver somewhere if you want to save. There's a few sleepers for people this week.
Yeah, and Gesicki, he is listed as questionable, limited participant in practice yesterday. No updates on him, but yeah, he would be another good one to play against that Washington defense. But yeah, I love your pick with Tyler Conklin. I loved it more right before the draft.
He popped last night.
Yep. When everybody was saying that the New York Jets were going to draft Brock Bowers, and I was like, they don't need him. As soon as they get Rodgers back, they've got a good tight end.
And he targets the tight end.
Yeah.
Think about it, Jeff. 6 catches for 55 yards is a tight end 1.
Yeah, and
you don't need a touchdown.
Yeah, and he wasn't the only tight end catching passes.
Yeah.
So he went quite frequently. And, let's be honest, Rodgers went to everyone. I think he ended up with like 8 or 9 different receivers last night. So
yeah, he was on big time last night.
That's the Aaron Rodgers of old. I like that one.
Yeah.
Here's a super sleeper I've got for you. How about Brenton Strange?
Yep. The Jacksonville.
Yep. Evan Ingram is out. Evan Ingram had the most receptions out of any tight end last year, and he's got the same quarterback there, Jacksonville. With, so it's like
that's a really good one right there.
You gotta assume that they've got the same kind of gameplay as last year, or similar anyway, where they go to the tight ends. They're playing against Buffalo again. I don't think that it's going to be a close game, so they're going to be playing from behind. They're going to have to pass. Brenton Strange might be somebody that you want to look up.
And just a little DFS plug there, or I should say tip, not plug. Monday night, there's 2 games this week. Some people may not know that. So you can get on the slate, you can get a combo. And if you take your pick right there at tight end on the 2-game slate, you can load up. You can load up somewhere else. You can spend up big time because you're going to save a lot of money with him at tight end. You can load up, obviously get your stud quarterback, and go, load up on the wide receiver. So that's a great selection in multi-facets for people right there.
You got it, sir. All right, let's switch over to defenses real quick. This will be pretty self-explanatory, I guess. I've got your best 3 defenses out there for the week. Cleveland against the New York Giants. I've got the Chargers against Pittsburgh, and I've got San Fran against LA. Just because they don't have much of an offense right now.
One I like is the Seahawks again. I was actually in leagues going to drop the Seahawks, but now because they're playing Miami, but obviously now with the quarterback situation in a lot of my leagues, I held on to them. I like them a lot this week. I picked up the Raiders in a lot of spots, obviously, because all you have to do is basically, if you want every week, whoever's playing the Panthers, just go ahead and start that defense until be proven otherwise. Those are my 2 for you.
That's a good one. I had Seattle in my sleepers, and I'm actually starting them in my keeper league this week over Chicago. But yeah, I've got Seattle versus Miami and Indy actually versus Chicago. If they can't turn around this quarterback play, would be a couple of good ones. And Tennessee against Green Bay might not be a bad idea either. For some must-sits, I don't know if anybody is actually playing these guys, but the Commanders, obviously get rid of them. Don't start them. Don't
No.
start Jacksonville. We've beaten that one with a dead horse.
Yep.
Dead
The
horse.
Commanders secondary is a minefield to go along with what you're saying there.
Arizona against Detroit and Detroit against Arizona. I'd skip on both of those. And then Philadelphia at New Orleans, I would stay away from that as well, just because they're putting up damn near 50 points a game.
I'll use the wagering as a tiebreaker too, or I'll just go look for, just a tip for people, go look for the big spreads as one and try to get that defense, because if they get it one-sided, then the defense will not just pin back and go after the quarterback and create some turnovers, and go find the low implied game totals. Like the Steelers game, if I remember, memory serves me, the over-under is 36 in that game.
Yeah.
So go target that. You could play the chart. I can't remember if we mentioned it, but I mean, Pittsburgh, everyone knows they have a great defense. That's why they're 2-0. It's certainly not because of the offense.
Right.
And I'm saying that as a Steeler fan, but the Chargers, at the over-under, I think it's 36. It's 35. It's now dropped to 35.5.
Wow.
So think about that. Like,
people are still betting the under.
Yeah, go find a low game total every week and see if that defense is available, and go find one of those defenses. And that's if you're a streamer.
Yep, that's what I do all the time. I'll give you a little, I guess, my pointers anyway, and it worked out just fine for me in both of my leagues. I did not draft a kicker in either one of my leagues.
Same here.
And we're talking about a 16-man league and a 12-man league that you get to keep. You get to load up your roster with 20 different players.
Yeah.
I went out in one league and I got Fairbairn. He's been very good for me. And in the other one, I just dropped Cameron Dicker, who's been solid, and picked up Blake Groupie for the Saints. So it's like
you took my guy, because I picked up Groupie in 4 leagues this week, because I had Tyler Bass, which is okay, but I heard rumblings he missed a kick last week. I heard they're getting mad at him, so I picked up Groupie.
But it's like, for everyone that picks, I got to get Tucker early, I got to get Aubrey, I got to get whoever it is. No, you don't.
No.
Those guys, they might be on very good teams and they might have the strongest legs or whatever, but a kicker is a kicker. Groupie got me 20 points last week.
Yep.
Or I'm sorry, Dick
was a great kicker for the Steelers right now, because they don't score any touchdowns.
Yeah. How about?
But he wasn't ranked up there. I don't draft a kicker ever. I do draft a defense with the last pick, but I never draft kicker unless it's I'm in a league that requires you to draft. I'm in an FFPC league and you're required to draft a starting lineup, so I have to take a kicker. So obviously that's my last pick. But if I don't have to, I take the extra player just in case someone gets hurt. And then, when the free for all starts, the free agency, I just, I'll go look for a kicker. And again, I'll go look for a kicker and a high implied total if I can.
Yeah. And I'm not picking a defense unless there's a really good one that should have maybe went 3 rounds earlier. Then I'm thinking, oh gosh, I should maybe pick this up, which is what I did with my Buffalo defense pick. And that turned out really well for me. But otherwise, in my other league, I've got Chicago, who I picked up later, and Seattle, who I think was a free agent.
Yep. I got Seattle was a free agent, and now you're going to get 3 weeks. If you did with that, Jeff, you're going to get 3 weeks out of your defense, because you could start Seattle this week.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, we've got another question. Hunter 18, should I drop Tank Bigsby for Akers because he is starting now?
If you need a starting running back this week, yes. If you can hold Bigsby as insurance, as like somewhat of a lottery ticket, if something happens to ETN. Because you don't know how many weeks. I mean, this could just be a 1 week for Mixon. If you need someone this week, then do it. If you don't, I would hold on.
Yeah, took the words right out of my mouth. Only if you need to. I don't have a whole lot, and Cam Akers was a guy that I had on my my sit list because of the fact that they're going against a very strong Minnesota team. So really, I see Cam Akers as a last resort. If you absolutely need somebody, you might get lucky. He might give you 7-8 points in that game, but outside of that, Mixon comes back and you're done. He's done. I could put Akers in the flex over Brian Thomas.
I guess if he starts, Jeff, you could, you'd use him. Let me just look at something real quick to help him out.
Sure.
In the Texans.
Could put him in the flex over
Brian Thomas has a tough matchup. You and I already talked about that with the Bills defense. I mean, and
it's a PPR league.
Yeah, so if Akers starts, just so we give him. I'm gonna try to give him a good answer. You know, Houston is favored right now. It's a small favorite. That's what I looked at. The total's at 46. Okay, that's not a bad total. But if Akers starts, you could start him this week. If you don't have better options, go ahead. Because I'm not. I would start Akers over Thomas. I don't know how you feel that Buffalo defense and Lawrence is not lighting it up.
No, they're actually, I mean, if you look at it, they're one of the worst pass offenses that are out there right now, which is amazing considering the fact that he was the highest paid quarterback at one point in time. Yeah, just looking at Brian Thomas Jr. here, I mean, he's getting 4 targets per game.
Yeah.
Four
I mean,
catches in week 2. That's not a real reassuring thing there for me on, even if it is a PPR league, you got 6 points out of him,
and here you go.
I'd go Akers.
Yep. And look at how about this, Jeff, on Trevor Lawrence. His completion percentage is 51%.
Ouch.
1 touchdown, no interceptions in 2 games. I know it's shallow, it's 2 games, but he was a top pick. And they got him some weapons. He's got some weapons on that team.
Yeah, well, they went out. They got Gabe Davis. They drafted Brian Thomas Jr. They still have Travis Etienne.
Now, Ingram got hurt, but he's a tight end 1.
Yeah. All right, here's another one. We got drop Benson, Dowdle, or Bigsby. I would keep Benson for sure. I don't know. I guess I'm leaning toward Bigsby. Yeah,
Benson. I mean, I'm assuming he doesn't have James Conner, because if he has James Conner, you're not dropping Benson.
Yeah, if you've got a handcuff, of course you want to keep your guy that's the handcuff.
So I mean, I don't. That's a tough. I mean,
I would keep Dowdle because I think he's going to overtake Ezekiel Elliott. So you've got a potential number 1 there. Right now he's splitting time kind of 50-50. I'd keep Trey Benson. They seem to have a very high-powered offense. If James Conner goes down, which has been his forte for the majority of his career, he's a great insurance policy to have. And then you're looking at Bigsby, which we just talked about Jacksonville, and their offense has been stagnant.
Yeah, and you got to have some lottery tickets on your bench. Like, you got to have some upside on your bench.
Yeah, we're not playing for guys that are going to, statistically give you 3 or 4 points every week. That's not going to win you any games.
Right, exactly.
Yep, so I'd keep Benson and Dowdle. If you're asking to drop one of those 3, it'd be Bigsby for me.
Bigsby, absolutely. I agree, 100%.
Cool. All right. Well, we're at about that hour mark here, aren't we?
Yep.
I think we've. I want to say thank you for everyone who's asking questions on this Friday. Thank you so much. Please follow along. Follow both of us. If you're looking for fantasy football advice, this is pretty much what we dive ourselves into. I probably spend a good 30, 40 hours a week. It's like a full-time job going through everything, and then second questioning myself about, did I make the right pickup and did I make the right trade and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're unsure about something, you want to bounce something off the wall, like I mentioned earlier, I've got another guy, DJ Dove at the Fantasy Couriers. I was seriously, I had no idea what to do with this one move, and I asked him, and if he didn't give me good advice this week, then he's gonna hear about it. I tell you that. But yeah, please follow along, share, follow, like. We're everywhere. Shawn, I don't know about you, but I'm on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, we're on YouTube right now, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Yep, same here.
Pretty much.
You can follow me at put my thing on at the coach's desk. That's my Twitter feed. And then if I always put my stuff on there, Total Apex Sports, where you can find my wagering stuff and my fantasy stuff. Super excited, like I said, to be working for them.
Yeah.
And beautiful. Then the both of us put our plug out for the Fantasy Turf War, because that's how you and I met.
Yep.
I won't
Fantasy Turf War is
just
really
don't
cool
tell anybody. I'm 0-2, but there's time left.
I'm 1-1, and I'm not looking forward to this weekend. But yeah, Fantasy Turf Wars, if you follow them as well, they're going to
absolutely
more people, and then they're going to do a contest to give away a signed Christian McCaffrey helmet. Okay. So do that as well, or you can follow me right here, www.downfieldread.com. But yeah.
Yeah, and Fantasy Turf brought us together, so that we got to always thank them, because you and I wouldn't be on your show if it wasn't for them. So
yeah, I'd only have half a platform, really. So
yeah, And thank you for having me on again, Jeff.
Hey, Shawn, anytime. If you want to make this a regular thing on Fridays, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. And I really thank the people that wrote in, because that really helps you and I, makes us better at our craft, because we can give advice, bounce ideas. And it was, and it was pretty cool that you and I had very similar, very, very similar starts and sets. It was pretty cool. So
good deal. Shawn, have a great weekend, my friend.
You too, buddy. Good luck in the week in fantasy turf this week, too.
You as well. Get off the schneid.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right.